Hello everyone! Welcome back to my kitchen. Okay, so before I jump into the story of Paul baptizing Lydia, I have two things I need to do. One, I need to recap what we learned last week about the early believers because some of the things we learned last week pertain to this story. And two, I need to ask you to retrieve something because I have an activity that we're going to be doing at the end of this story, but you need some things for it. So you only need two things. Thing number one is you need a piece of paper big enough that you can put two kind of largest circles on. And the second thing you need is, of course, something to draw or write with. So it could be a crayon, a pencil, a pen, a marker, whatever you have available, okay? Perfect. Okay, so the early believers that we learned about last week, they had three things that were important to them. Thing number one was to pray for those in need. Thing number two was to kind of spread or share the teachings of God and Jesus Christ. And thing number three was that it was really important that people shared their talents and belongings with the church. It wasn't mine and yours. Because we are a community, we all deserve to have those things. Okay. So, now that I've laid that out, let's jump right into the story of Paul and Lydia. Now, first thing first, who is Paul? So, Paul is a disciple of Jesus. We talked about them kind of a while back, but disciples were basically kind of those first believers that were really, really close to Jesus. They were kind of ate at the Last Supper. They were amongst his friends. So they were really kind of important, and they were leaders within the church. And Paul was one of those leaders. Now, Paul, as a disciple, was tasked with spreading all of the news and information that people had about Jesus Christ and God. So he traveled kind of all over the map, kind of spreading all of this information so that he could gather more followers and kind of share the teachings and the love of Jesus Christ. So one of the places that Paul visited was a little itty-bitty town called Philippi. And Philippi was actually kind of ruled by Romans at that time. So it was a little bit dangerous for Paul to be there because Romans and disciples really did not get along. They had kind of negative feelings about each other. So it was kind of risky for Paul to come to this place to spread his teachings. And the way that he spread his teaching was every single Sunday he would find a place to kind of set up their church. Remember how we talked that church was not held in one specific building, but it was the people that were church. So Paul was basically setting up his church wherever he wanted. So that Sunday, or Sabbath, he decided to set up his church by the riverbank where he had seen a bunch of people gathering. And while he was setting up his church, which was really just him, kind of talking and sharing, he met a young woman named Lydia. And as he started to speak, Lydia kind of had a little whisper. And she heard the voice of God basically saying that the Lord was opening up her heart to listen eagerly to what was being said by Paul. And so she heard that whisper and her ears perked up. She's like, oh, I really need to listen to what Paul has to say. This will be important to me. So she really focused in, and after listening to all that kind of Paul had to say about Jesus and his love for humankind and kind of what he was all about, she was so moved that she decided that right then and there she wanted to be baptized. She's like, I am all in. So Paul, of course, baptizes her in the river right there, and the kind of church sermon is over. They're done for this Sunday, and he's like, okay, that's it. I baptized. That's probably the last I'll see of Miss Lydia. But what he didn't know was that Lydia was, in fact, a merchant. And she wasn't just kind of any merchant. She didn't sell, bread or potatoes or anything like that. She was a merchant that sold purple cloth. And back then, purple was a color only used by kind of the most rich and kind of famous. So kings and queens and kind of royalty and things like that. So just by the fact that she made this purple cloth, Lydia was very well off, and she had a very large household. So the next Sunday comes around, and she brings her whole household to get baptized by Paul. And households back then weren't like they are now. It wasn't just her family. Her household included family, friends that were staying with her, as well as her servants. So she didn't just bring one or two people. She brought probably a good solid 10, 15 people to be baptized by Paul. And she told him that she was so moved and she so believed in what Jesus was talking about and what he had been talking about that she wanted to share her home with Paul and his companions. And Paul's like, no, 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 that's your home. We can't possibly stay there. And Lydia was like, no, you need to come stay in my house because, don't get me wrong, holding church by the river is just fine, but one, it's not very safe, and two, what happens when you're not here? Or if you decide to take church to someplace else, it can be really hard for people to track you down. So why don't you come to my house, and that can kind of be like your base. That can be where people will come to know they can learn the teachings of Jesus Christ without having to worry that they might miss you. So Paul and his companions think, you know what? That's a good idea. So they move on in, and Lydia's house kind of now becomes a central hub to where people can now come to have one specific place where they know they can come and kind of learn about the teachings of Jesus Christ. Now, why is this important? So the reason this is important is because Lydia, this stranger, really popped in and became like a leader of the church. She wasn't willing to just kind of be somebody on the side kind of listening. She said, no, this is important and other people need to learn this too. So she kind of opened up the doorways, so to speak, of the first like real physical building church. And so back then it was really hard for women to become leaders, but she did it. She went ahead and stood up and was like, this is important, this needs to be done. I'm going to make sure that people have a place that they can come and feel welcome and know that they won't have to worry about knocking into the doors. So before we move on to our activity, I have a quick prayer for us to say, and we'll do it kind of like we do the prayer in our children's conversation, where I will say it first and then you will repeat it back. Okay, ready to pop right on in? Alrighty. So, dear Lord, thank you for Lydia and all the other women who have taught us more about you. Help us use our talents to serve you. Amen. Okay, so now let's go into our activity. So our activity, I need you to draw 2 big circles. And in these circles, I need you to write something. In the first top circle, I have things I do well. And in the bottom circle, I have how I am able to give. Now, in the top circle, I want you to write down a list of things that you think you do well. So, things that I do well. I would say I'm a pretty good singer. My job is to care for people, so caring for others. I also do a good job of keeping my room clean. Let's see, what else am I good at? I'm also good at, I'm good at sending cards. Okay, so now that I've written that and things that I do well, I've written singer, caring for others, cleaning, and sending cards. And now, how am I able to give? In this bottom circle, you're going to write how you can turn those things that you do well into things that you were able to then give. So, a singer, maybe I can sign up to submit music, because now we're doing the virtual church. So maybe I'll submit a song to be played during service. Caring for others. Well, caring for others, another good thing to do is I might reach out to see if maybe anybody needs help with volunteering. So caring for others and sending cards, that could be kind of connected together, because I don't know about you, but I felt a little lonely. And a way that I've been kind of connecting with my friends is I have been sending cards. I've been sending snail mail to them to kind of keep us connected, so that way we don't feel so alone. So maybe we can talk about sending cards, because that helps care for others. Send cards. Cleaning. Now, how can I make cleaning so that I'm able to give? Well, maybe I can reach out and I can offer, once we're able to go back into the building, maybe I can offer to help clean up the sanctuary after service one day. Clean the sanctuary. Okay, well, now that I've made your list, what I want you to do is now make your list and see if you can come up with ways that you can do the things that you like and how they can connect to how you're actually able to give. Okay. Well, that's about that. Thank you so much for joining me in my kitchen. I can't wait to see you next week. If you have any questions or concerns, or you just want to show me what you've been up to, feel free to shoot me an email at camille.breckenridge@colonialucc.org, or you can always post something on Facebook and I can make sure I can see it that way too, alrighty? Okay, well, goodbye everyone. I hope to see you next week.